I'm Bryan Cox here with Ian Quiel with Southern Nevada Off-Road Recovery, and hopefully this is part 2 for you. The first video to start with is our splicing video, and this one is going to carry on with some of the same things we described there. This is it's trail repair and a little bit more. In the first video, I held this piece up here. This is an example of what happened to a guy. He was actually a pretty experienced off-roader based on the trail stickers he had on his Jeep. But he snapped off his hook, and he had the thimble at the end. And you know, if you lose the hook, or we're going to describe 3 different things you can do with this next process. One is, what do you do if you lose your hook? You're out there, you snapped your hook off, and you need to create another hook. The other thing is this is a product of Factor 55, but similar products are out there from TRE, Tactical Recovery Equipment, and I think there's other brands out there. This is a splice-on. The same method is used to attach this style of a shackle mount. But also, the third thing we're going to talk about is how to make your own winch extensions from a winch rope you're not using anymore. Okay. So with that, let's first of all go with the trail repair. What do you do if you snap the end of your line off and you basically need to create a loop to get to attach to something to get out?
Right. So at this point, you can see from the prior video we already had this beveled and trimmed down. But if it would have snapped, it would have been similar to this guy, where it, would have looked something like that. And so you really would want to tape that and cut it off cleanly, and then re-taper that so you have a good line going into itself, a nice clean line going into itself there. So this represents where the hook would have been if it happened to break off there. And what we're going to show you today is how you can loop that back into itself using the Factor 55 Fast Fit, which is this little guy right here, to quickly bury itself back into the rope and give you that same strength that you had with the hook that you had on there, obviously with the synthetic loop.
Now, in the prior video, we did a lot more discussion on the economics of the FID, what it costs, and what the alternatives are. And our conclusion is that the Factor 55 FID is the tool to get and to keep in your glove box if you're gonna off-road with a synthetic winch rope.
Okay, so what I'm doing here is you want to measure out about 30 inches of winch rope to have the proper bury for the most secure splicing. So I had already pre-measured the Fast Fit and realized it was 16 inches. So we're going to double that, putting it at about 32, which is just a little bit more, but can't hurt to have a little bit more buried in there. And we're going to just go ahead and mark that at 32, just so we know where we would come out, essentially, right, with that other rope.
Yeah.
So,
but actually, we would want to extend it a little bit due to the loop, though, maybe.
That's right.
Okay, just a little bit, maybe 4. I guess depends on how big the loop is we want. But
right.
We're actually plus 6 inches anyway, with where you're at.
Right.
Yeah. So I think we're good. I'm sorry to interrupt.
We're about plus 2 inches, I think.
And I don't think you need a big loop on this for a trail repair.
You want something about there. So let's just measure just in case I'm not crazy, and we'll make sure that we got actually 30 in there, because I don't want to have it short. So yeah, we're short to your point. We're at 24.
Oh, we are. Okay, so maybe just move it a little bit.
So I think we want to go about, this would be 30 here, and then another, probably 4 inches puts you about there.
Okay.
And that's a good call.
There we go.
Taking into account the size of the loop there. We'll reset that.
Okay, so now we got it measured, we got it marked, and we're ready to go.
All right.
Previous video we demonstrated how to do the taper. The taper is important. It does add strength to taper it.
Okay, so we're going to start off with, you're going to want to start off with going back through the rope just after your measured line there. So you're going to go through the center, and then you're going to want to go all the way through that line. Now
there's another type of lock you can use. It's called the Brummel lock, and it is a very good way to do it. It's very, quite frankly, it looks really well, and there's ways to do it even if you only have access to one end of the line. quite frankly, I'm very comfortable using just the going through and coming back lock. I think it does just fine. And what Ian's doing here is the Dyneema rope is like a tube, and right now he's going through for the first run through.
How about that, Bryan? Does that look about
That looks
appropriate?
great. That looks great.
Okay.
And what he's going to do is now he's going to go back through the line, and then lastly he's going to go back in for what we call the deep bury, for the roughly 26 to 30 inches we were talking about. Yeah, that's strong. You got it.
Pretty good there.
Now this is a lock that I think is sufficient, and the lock, as we talked about in the first video, is enough to hold the rope in place while there's no tension. That's all it's there for, because the strength of this, you're splicing the rope into itself, is the bury.
Right.
There we go. Yep, you got it. That's it. You got it. Okay. So with that, we're going to pull the fit out, and our loop is complete.
Okay.
So you've completed this. You put this on the end of your winch rope. Now, if this was going to be more permanent, you maybe get a sleeve to put on there, or you could even wrap it with duct tape or electrical tape just to keep it from abrasion. But you have a perfect little loop here to put your screw bow shackle on, or a soft shackle. And quite frankly, I think arguably you have something as good or better, or as good as what you had with the original shackle mount. You're able to keep going and recover. So we got this done. That's what you do if you snapped your hook off. The splice on shackle mount or thimble goes on the exact same way. The difference is that you're going to feed this loop through the thimble before you get to it, and it's going to be right out the back.
Right.
And I'm a big fan of these splice-ons. They're really good. I don't know if I'd carry one in case my line broke, because if I did, I would just use the shackle. But these are really great. If you have a winch line that either didn't come with a thimble on the end, or you had to cut it for some reason to get the other hook off, it's a great alternative.
A lot of the hooks come with a cotter pin here too.
Right.
So if you had that system, you could just take the cotter pin out and go right in there, and you're good to go.
If I don't have the steel thimble to hold that, I would probably use the splice on instead. Yeah. Personally, but that's just my preference.
As long as you get, the main thing to remember is keeping it at least the diameter of the rope.
Yeah.
Nothing less than the diameter of the rope that you're going to hook it to. Like you can see the shackle's the same diameter or more.
Right, yeah.
So you're not at any risk of reducing strength there with the bend.
Now the last thing you can do, and it's something I've done with my prior winch lines, is you take an old rope and maybe you're swapping it out because you've damaged it or you worn it. Maybe there's a section you want to cut out and discard, but once that's done, you have a great length of rope that's 60 feet.
Yeah.
And you put this in both ends.
Sure.
With this in both ends, if I was going to make it permanent, I would put a sleeve there.
Right.
And you have a winch extension. And for some recoveries with especially what we do, we can't get that close. Or you want to run a pulley block, or even something more like a Spanish Burton, you're going to have some extensions to do it.
Absolutely.
And so we all carry winch extensions, and I don't throw away my winch lines. This is something I would do with a winch line when I'm done with it.
Absolutely.
And I will do this with this line, but I'm just not sure exactly what lengths I want to do. You know, I may want something shorter. You know,
Right.
there's a lot of use for a 20 foot, a lot of use for a 30 foot or longer.
Yeah, and some of the guys even make like an 8 foot for, you know, a bridle.
Yeah,
Something
right.
shorter. So
Yeah,
you can get a lot out of an 85 foot or 100 foot winch line.
So the splice in what we talked about in the deep bury is identical for both splices. This is just half the rope. But quite frankly, that's the only skill you need to learn how to do is to get the taper, get the fit in there, get it locked in and get it buried. And whether you're splicing two lines together or creating this loop, I don't know what else you need to do. You know, I think that's pretty much the skill you need.
Yep.
And you know, we don't work for Factor 55. They do not give us these fids. We bought our own, but I recommend it, and it's the tool for the job, and it makes it so much easier.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely something to look into. I know a lot of people do go out off-roading. We don't recommend it alone, but if you ever were out there alone and something snapped on you, you'd have a way to get yourself back home, hopefully, there with being able to put that rope back together again, right? So I think that's, and then also reusing the rope, like Bryan said, there's so much more you can get out of a rope once you take it off, as long as it's not damaged. You can add a couple more winch extensions to your toolkit.
Yeah. Not uncommon for us to have to go out a couple hundred feet. It's not, well, I guess it's not every day, but we've had to do it a few times.
Sometimes we just prefer not to get in the risky areas, right? So if we can stay back a ways and use an extension, we will.
When you get out to those muddy, dry lake beds, you don't want to wander out there. And another thing too is I just spent a lot of money on my new winch line. If I'm going to get something muddy and damaged, perhaps, I'd rather be with my old winch line than my new one.
Sure. Yeah.
So, just a thought. So three things you can do with this very simple loop.
Mm-hmm.
And that concludes part 2. Thank you.
Thank you.